Hello, I'm William Sculthorpe, Doncaster-based artist, and today I'm talking about Baroque art. This is part of a series of films sponsored by Doncaster Council, curated by Chinwe Russell. So thank you to Chinwe and Doncaster Council for that. I'm here in Doncaster Corn Exchange, which has several artists' studios and galleries, including my own here. It's part of the busy, varied, vibrant artistic community in Doncaster. There are organisations such as the Doncaster Art Fair and the New Fringe, and many artists producing a lot of different work of many different kinds. Baroque was a universal style in the arts throughout the 17th century and much of the 18th century. It started in Italy around the year 1600. This is one of the earliest examples of Baroque painting. Caravaggio's Calling of St. Matthew in San Luigi della Francese in Rome. Immediately apparent is the intense chiaroscuro, light and shade effects, which is typical of Caravaggio's work. Chiaroscuro, along with other techniques of heightened realism, had been developed during the Renaissance by artists such as Leonardo da Vinci, but Caravaggio uses it in a more intense way, more dramatic, and this was typical of the Baroque. The Baroque was a style which would take elements to a greater extreme, whether it be compositional movement and complexity, or the depiction of emotional expression and violence. This is the martyrdom of St. Matthew, part of the same commission, which was Caravaggio's big break after arriving in Rome. Caravaggio was known for using life models, painting from direct observation. This was a great part of way of painting realistically. This is his painting of St. Thomas, Doubting Thomas, testing Christ's resurrection by putting his finger into the wound in his side. A direct interpretation of the story, and also typical, again, Caravaggio's use of light and shade. Both the explicitness of the representation and the light and shade, the realism, very influential on artists of the time. This is one of Caravaggio's late paintings, painted in Naples towards the end of his career, his short life. It shows the beheading of John the Baptist. Naples at the time was a Spanish-governed region of Italy, and through artists such as Giuseppe Ribera, his influence moved to Spain. Many other artists at the time were influenced by Caravaggio, including Artemisia Gentileschi. We see here her beheading of Holofernes, which again shows the dramatic chiaroscuro and the violent nature of the subject. Baroque art in general is less limited, restricted and restrained than the classical art of the Renaissance. It was more extrovert, more theatrical and dramatic, though varied in many ways. Although Caravaggio was very influential, there were many other strands of the Baroque, more cheerful, bright, colourful. This is The Descent from the Cross by Rubens. Rubens, early in his career, worked in Italy and was influenced by many Italian painters, including Caravaggio, but possibly more so by Titian. Rubens was one of the most typical painters of the Baroque. There was a great variety to his work. He is known painter of fat women, which is somewhat unfair. There's much more to his work than that. He seems to have painted almost anything with great enthusiasm, vividness and sense of light, including late series of landscapes as well as family portraits. Much of Rubens's work is large scale, ambitious and complex, and this is typical of the Baroque, which could be described as an extrovert style. Rubens was hugely successful. His work was in great demand all over Europe, a great variety of his work. During the Baroque period, the market for art and the demand from various sources, both private and public commissions, greatly expanded, especially in the northern Netherlands, which is now known as Holland. This is one of Rembrandt's earliest paintings, a dramatic narrative painting, The Blinding of Samson, which shows the typical early 17th century sense of drama and unrestrained expression, violence. However, Rembrandt was most successful as a portrait painter, greatly in demand early in his career. This is The Night Watch, which shows the Amsterdam Home Guards about to go on patrol. It could have been a still posed group portrait that was commissioned. But Rembrandt shows them as actively and dramatically as could be, about to start on their march, uses light and shade in a similar manner to Caravaggio, however possibly with rather more subtlety and complexity. Subtlety and complexity of Rembrandt's painting, particularly seen in his portraits. This is a later self-portrait. In his later career, Rembrandt was less popular and less in demand, and his self-portraits seem to document struggling situation of his life and his complex emotions. Also, his own face was the most immediately accessible model for any artist. All they need to do a self-portrait is a mirror, even if no one wants to commission a portrait from them. Rembrandt was also known for his personal religious paintings, and this is one of them, in his late style, The Return of the Prodigal Son. It shows more subtle emotional expression than in many of Rembrandt's earlier paintings, and also other earlier Baroque artists. Shows sense of rich but subdued colour, which is typical of Rembrandt. The more subtle and complex ways of painting can also be seen in some other Baroque artists, especially Velázquez. Velázquez's early work was in many ways similar to Caravaggio. This is The Water Cellar of Seville, and it shows the same observational style as Caravaggio, with the dramatic, intense light and shade and sense of reality. Velázquez was very young and practiced apparently his observational skills, he would have a model making different facial expressions and would draw them very quickly to develop his skill. He was known as one of the most skillful painters, 17th century indeed, of all time. At the age of only 23, he became court artist for the King of Spain and spent much of his life painting portraits, not only of the royal family, but also of the servants and entertainers at the court. Known for many paintings of the dwarves that the Spanish royal family liked to keep as companions and entertainers. This is a painting, however, of Velázquez's studio assistant. It is one of the best examples of the lifelike quality. This is one of Velázquez's later works, Las Hilanderas, the Spinners, which shows the tapestry workers and also the scene of the tapestry they are weaving in the background. It's a complex scene showing various different kinds of light and different modes of representation. The figures in the foreground shown more solidly and more suggestively. We can see the figures in the background. There's overall sense of real light woven together in a complex and subtle manner. This is Velázquez's most famous painting, Las Meninas. It shows the Infanta Margarita and her maids and her dwarves, and Velázquez himself painting large composition, which may be Las Meninas itself. It may be a portrait of the king and queen who can be seen reflected dimly in a mirror at the back of the painting. Many theories about what it represents and what it means. However, possibly more interest for painters is the quality of the painting itself. All the figures are shown in a lifelike and natural manner. There's a sense of space and solidity and reality, the light. However, close up, the painting is extremely loose, almost sketchy. Blotches, patches and streaks of paint, which when you stand back form into a convincing impression of reality. This is an example of Velázquez's skill, why he was known as the painter's painter, and is one of the aspects of the variety of Baroque painting. Thank you for watching this video. There is much more to see of Baroque painting and Baroque art in general that cannot be fitted into a short film, and I would urge you to research the Baroque and Baroque artists